So, Halloween is almost here. I've gone through the whole freaking month and I've stayed true to my word and had at least one video up every day. And most of those videos were, me playing video games. And for those of you who don't like my video game playthrough videos, I apologize. I understand not everybody likes those. A lot of my viewers come here to see my thoughts on movies and Blu-ray pickups and all that. And that's fine. And I hope you don't have a problem with me, putting other stuff up here. But I mean, that's just the way I do. I prefer to use my channel for more than just one particular subject. I prefer to use it for any subject that should so enter my brain, So if I feel like doing a video game playthrough, well, I'm going to do a video game playthrough. I wanted to play some horror games this year for Halloween, so I said, well, I'm going to play some horror games and or maybe not horror, but, some creepy games, and put the playthroughs up here on YouTube. I think the next time I try to do something like that, I'm going to try to do what Sean suggested, which is to which is to do the capture footage, just to show my response to it all. I guess you can see me playing the game and see how I'm actually reacting to it, which would take more time, but wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing either. I don't know. I haven't decided on that yet, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. I just thought I'd get that off my chest before going into the subject that we are going to be talking about today. Obviously, we're talking about Paranormal Activity 4. Now, if you watched my my horror movie marathon, then chances are you know that I'm a pretty big fan of the Paranormal Activity movies. I like cinema verite. I like the found footage film. Basically, I think it's a really cool new, maybe not new now, but it's still being used, and a horror genre that is still to this day being used and still very popular. And a lot of people think of it as new, even though it's been around for decades. Not forever, but for decades. And, watching some of the older ones now and some of the newer ones, like comparing them to some of the newer ones, seeing how it has progressed through the years, I really am a fan of the found footage film. I think that it's pretty awesome, and it's still got a lot to offer, although one could make a case that it's on its way out. But I don't think it is. I think it's got a lot left to offer, and I think that we're going to, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, see a lot more of these movies, if not even longer. I don't know, maybe, but I'll say at least next 5 to 10 years. So, Paranormal Activity 4 recently came out. I've seen every single Paranormal Activity movie, including now this one. And one of the reasons I liked these movies is that although throughout the series a little bit of the touch from the first movie was lost throughout, although that was the case, there was still an attachment, a deep-rooted attachment to the story, to the foundations of the story, as it were. I mean, I had a few problems that I didn't understand at first in the parts 2 and 3 when I saw them, but over time I watched it again and I realized, oh, well, that's what that was about. And I fell for the trailer thing where every single time they put out a trailer for these movies, there's always a bunch of footage in the trailer that never ends up in the movie, not even in the special edition version of the movie. And every time I fall for that, I feel like, you sons of bitches. I thought this was going to be in there, So in the last one, in part 3, I was expecting there to be the fire, as I mentioned in my other Paranormal Activity Paranormal Activity videos. I was expecting to see something about the fire that takes place at the residence. But there was nothing. Because, they set up in the first movie that there's some kind of a fire taking, their house burnt down or something. I can't remember exactly what they set up. But they set up the concept that when they were kids, something happened and their house burnt down. And that picture that she found in the attic shouldn't have been there. Now, in the second movie, at least in the special version, edition version, like the DVD Blu-ray version, they allude to them taking. Maybe it's actually in the third movie, but it's in one of the second or third movies where they allude to the whole concept that the picture was burnt and taken to her house and placed there or something. As a means of offering or something, as staving off this demon or whatever that was entering the house in part 2. So they set that up, that the picture wasn't burnt because it was in the house fire. It was burnt because it was being used to defer the demon or whatever. So that part taken care of. The picture wasn't on fire because of the house fire. It was on fire because of that. Okay, got it. The house still burnt down, and there were only a few remaining artifacts, as it were, from that house, including the video footage, which conveniently gets transferred from one house to the other, from the main house to the house in Paranormal Activity 2. Since we've already seen this concept of a transference being not only a transference of property, but of also this demon or this entity or whatever it is, it leads me to believe that it was kind of like they were swapping back and forth there. Maybe this isn't a new thing for them. That they're just like every time something starts to happen, they have to do something about it. So they do something about it, and then, yeah. But then that would be confusing for why in the first movie she alluded to not really understanding what was going on and not remembering much about that when she was a kid. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's no problem with that. But throughout the second and third movies, what you had at the very least is a connection of the stories that made sense. It was telling the story in deeper detail. It was saying, okay, this goes beyond this. This has something to do with this, which has something to do with this, which has something to do with the whole thing, And as we're discovering more and more about the story, it's getting deeper and deeper, and just like, I can't wait to see what they do next. And I'm thinking to myself, what do they do when they can't even do found footage? I mean, what do they do when they have to go back to the 1930s, which is what they were saying is when this started and stuff, because nobody was really shooting home videos in the 1930s. Although the technology may have existed, nobody was really doing that at that time. So it didn't really happen until the 70s and the 80s that anybody recorded anything with a handheld camera, because that was about the time when the handheld cameras became something that could be used, which is why by the middle to upper class, by the middle class basically, that they could afford that kind of technology. Then it wasn't until then that they could afford that kind of technology, and that it really made sense for them to use that kind of technology. I guess you could make an argument that there were some families in the 50s and 60s and maybe even the 40s who were recording certain home videos, small, short home videos, but not really anything beyond, the whole the concept of like a family event, like the birthday thing that we see going on over and over again in the Paranormal Activity series, or at least I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times. I feel like. Anyways, but no, more like in terms of holidays. So like at Christmas time, maybe they do a little home video. But the point is, like, not many families actually went to the trouble of recording this kind of stuff. So it's like, how do you maintain the illusion that this could possibly be real? Which, by the way, I feel like is just completely gone now. It's like the audience is in on it. They know. Part of me wants them to acknowledge that and to play with the audience more. But another part of me just wants them to keep trying to keep the illusion going. So I don't know. Personally, I guess I would like more that they actually play with the audience a little bit on that area. But regardless, I think the problem, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that as the movie series goes on, we know that there's less and less that they can do with the subject. There are ways that they could make it work from maybe the 50s onward, definitely the 70s, but being that they've set up something that happened in the 1930s, if they really wanted to get into that, they would have to do something. I mean, I don't know. They'd have to do something quite interesting with the story. There'd have to be some pretty damn good writing, which, if they're able to do that, could mean a really good movie if they ever get around to going back to that time frame at least, which I would fully freaking welcome. I don't know why they feel like they have to go entirely found footage and that the found footage has to be entirely based around 80s onward, because it doesn't necessarily have to be based on that. So anyways, now that I've ranted about this subject for 13 minutes, how did I actually feel about Paranormal Activity 4? Well, the reason that I ranted on about that subject is because I feel like they kind of completely missed the ball with Paranormal Activity 4. Whereas in the first 3 movies, in the first 3 movies, you've got a middle to upper class family. Okay, perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that. Although I can't typically relate to that kind of a family, I can accept that. Like, okay, yeah, there are people out there like that, and this is probably how they act and how they react to this kind of thing and what goes on in their, relationships and whatnot in their families. It made sense. It felt like something I would see in real life. Paranormal Activity 4 did not feel that way. Paranormal Activity 4, it felt like they went to Leave It to Beaverland, where everything felt like it was just the perfect family from the very beginning. It's a movie set in 2011, but the family dynamic that they're trying to present as being realistic, not only is it not realistic, but the whole soccer mom aspect of it at first, and just the way that they act, reminds me more of like the mid to late 90s. Like, that's how things were in the mid to late 90s. It's been a decade since then, and families are a little bit different now than they were then. And they have a lot of different concerns on their mind now. I just felt like this one was completely and entirely washed of all reality, of all sense of reality. Like, these people actually exist, that these people actually could be a family in some way that actually acts like this. No family is that freaking perfect. Now, yes, there were a few kind of flaws alluded to in the film. There were a few flaws in the family, but they weren't that big of a flaw. The flaws that there were weren't that big. And they were only like slightly alluded to and then completely ignored in every other aspect, as if these flaws did not matter in any way, did not mean anything to any of the characters in the family or in the movie. Which is kind of hard to believe because flaws affect characters. So the fact that they weren't affecting characters in this film was pretty bothersome to me. And it didn't help that the end of the movie is so abrupt. And I mean, you don't have to answer any questions per se. I didn't like how the last one ended because I thought there was going to be something about the fire. I didn't like the way this one ended because it's just like, seemingly out of nowhere. Because the first few movies, they follow a basic plot structure that kind of in some way goes beginning, middle, end. Beginning, middle, end. Beginning, middle, end. In this movie, it felt like they went beginning, middle, end. Not going to get to the end. We're going to cut off before the end. What? It just feels to me like they cut out a lot from this movie that they're going to be putting in the Blu-ray or the DVD, the special edition, which is what they have done in the past. Now, this is a big problem that I have with the Paranormal Activity series because I don't think that's right. I don't think that it's right that people that paid their good freaking money, they pay $10 or more to go see this movie in the theaters, have a lot of material cut out of that film that they paid that fucking much to see, that they then have to go out and buy on Blu-ray or DVD when it comes out to see that material. So what you're basically saying is paying $10 to $15 for a ticket is not enough. You also have to pay $20 to $30 for a Blu-ray if you want all of the content. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of video game companies that cut out content from their video games and then make it downloadable content that you can download after you buy the video game and prove that you paid for it. So it doesn't just cost $60 to get a game. It costs $60 plus how much it costs for all the D2L just to, finish the game and get the whole thing. It's basically the same concept, except with movies. And that bothers me because it's bullshit, because it's toying with the theatrical experience. It's saying the theatrical experience doesn't really matter as much as you buying it on Blu-ray and DVD. And I feel like that's kind of a sign of where things are headed. Because as ignorant as movie studios may be sometimes, they're not ignorant enough to neglect to notice that typically they make more money off of DVDs and Blu-rays than they do off of the theatrical showings nowadays. So they're saying, well, fine, we'll put it out in theaters, but that isn't really what fucking matters to us. What matters to us is putting it out on DVD and Blu-ray. Because then we're going to make a lot of money. It's like, that's great, but then the people who paid for their pure theatrical experience are not getting their pure theatrical experience because they're not getting what they paid for. They're getting, 2/3 of what they paid for. Or maybe, 4/5 if they're lucky of what they paid for. That's bullshit. Am I wrong? That's fucking bullshit. For instance, in the second movie, this might be a little bit of a, spoiler for those of you who haven't seen it. But in the second movie, I believe the theatrical cut did not have anything about... It cut out like a very important plot point about two of the characters, the father and the daughter. Which is that, and you see it in the special edition, you see it in the Blu-ray, the fact that the father and the daughter married into this family. The father married this woman who is a part of this family that's got this stuff going on, So they married in to that family because his previous wife died. It's not explained why or how, but it is explained that she died and that the daughter, while treating her stepmother like her mother, still understands that there is a difference between her real mother and this new mother. And it says a lot more about their relationship in the movie and how they react with and talk to each other, because it shows that they're trying more to be friends than mother and daughter. And I feel like that's very important. And I feel like it's also important to note that because it sets up, again, the whole concept of marrying in, which happens at least one or two other times in the series. And it also sets up the concept that his wife died. How did she die? Maybe you could touch on that in a later film, which they may very well do. So imagine, if you will, you're somebody who only saw the theatrical cuts of the movies. You went and saw these movies in the theaters. You never bothered to buy them on DVD or Blu-ray. But every year when one comes out, you have to go see it because you're a pretty big fan of it. Not big enough to buy the movies on Blu-ray or DVD, but you still want to see what happens next. So you're going to see these movies, and suddenly you're getting confused because maybe in one of the later movies they start to talk about the mother of this of this daughter, the wife that died from mysterious causes in unexplained in the second movie. Suddenly they start talking about that plot point as if it's part of the whole structure of the films. But you've only seen the theatrical cut, so you wouldn't know about that because that part is only explained if you bought the Blu-rays and DVDs and got the special editions. So you're sitting here in the theater thinking to yourself, what the hell is this even about? They're changing the story. You don't realize that they're not changing the story because they already changed the story for the theatrical cut by cutting it out. That to me is kind of, that's bullshit. That's unfair. It's ridiculous to think that somebody who gets to go see a movie before anybody else in the theaters would not be getting the full experience that somebody who paid to get the Blu-ray or the DVD got. It's just ridiculous. I'm getting tired of companies doing this, of cutting out material from the film so that they can put it into a special edition. It's not fair. It's not right. It's fucking horseshit. But anyways, when it comes to Paranormal Activity 4, I did like it. It wasn't the worst movie ever. It might, in my opinion, be the worst movie in the series so far, and it's definitely a sign to me that the creators don't really care as much about the story as they used to, that they're, starting to slack a little bit when it comes to the character creation and the family creation of the family unit. It doesn't feel like a real family anymore. It just feels like they phoned it in. When it comes to stuff like that, that's a little bothersome, and I hope that they pick it up with the rest of the series. But I can also understand if you're one of the original filmmakers, like if you're Owen Pelly, you're probably thinking at this point, I'm getting tired of making these movies, and I don't want my entire career to be based upon only these movies. It's like, well, it's fine and great, and I understand where you're coming from, but as somebody who's a fan of the series, I would like you to give as much care and attention to it as you possibly can. I mean, don't you owe that to your fans? Maybe you don't, but that's a discussion worth having at least. Do you or don't you owe that to your fans? And I don't know. It's just, it really bothered me that, the family didn't feel like a cohesive family unit. It felt like a fake cohesive family unit. But I digress. It was still a good movie. Despite the fact that I felt like the ending was very much, they cut it off before it even got to the end there. It was just very abrupt. I still felt like it was a pretty good movie. And it, raises, like I said, it raises more questions about the story and gets you wondering about what's coming next. And actually, if you are a fan of the series like me, the fourth movie, isn't the only thing going on in the universe right now. Did you know that? Did you know that there's actually a viral marketing campaign going on right now for Paranormal Activity for the entire series here on YouTube? Did you know that there's actually somebody on YouTube who claims to be living in one of the houses attached to the film? Now, I'm pretty sure from the research that I've done that um, it's a house in or around the area of the house in the fourth film. So, will it help to watch? Will it help to watch the fourth movie? Yes, but does that necessarily mean that you have to in order to check this out? I don't think so. From what I've seen, it's very creepy, and it definitely has a lot to do with the Paranormal Activity films. I'd say if you've seen part two, at least part two, you can check this stuff out. But if you haven't seen part two, don't go there yet because there's a lot of stuff that's revealed in part two that you should probably understand before you get into this viral marketing stuff. But it's really cool and it's really creepy. And thank you to Travis Beerwagon, Planet Beerwagon, for this information actually, because when I saw that I was like, wow, this is creepy and it's cool, you know? And like he was saying about it though, it's actually a lot. In some ways, it's kind of creepier than the actual movie that they produced for Paranormal Activity 4. So I'm kind of hoping that if they do Paranormal Activity 5, either they, go back further or they build on this viral marketing campaign that they've already got going because I think it's pretty damn good. Um, in fact, I would like to see more viral marketing around these films. I feel like they've seen what people are doing with stuff like Marble Hornets and Slenderman and stuff like that, and they're starting to realize that they can get a pretty huge following online through the internet just by putting this kind of stuff out there, instead of just keeping it under wraps. They can get a pretty huge following, get people attached to the Paranormal Activity franchise even better if they go the route of the whole viral video marketing type thing. And honestly, I mean, you would think that I'd be against that in some way, but no, I think that it's really cool and it's working. It worked for me at least. This stuff is really creepy. So yes, if you want to see some of that viral marketing stuff, go to the link in the doobly-doo. I don't know why, but every time that I try to do one of the annotations, it shows up as being there for me, but then for some people on YouTube, it says that it's not there. So I'm not even going to do annotations anymore. So sorry if you would prefer me to do an annotation or whatever, but if not everybody can see them, what's the point of pointing to something and saying, click here? Just go to doobly-doo to be there. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Peace.